The Amazon rainforest stretches across 8 countries and 1 overseas territory in South America, covering over 2 million square miles of dense green wilderness. Within its depths lie secrets that challenge our understanding of history, nature, and the ancient peoples who once called this place home. For centuries, we believed we'd mapped its mysteries: trees, rivers, tribes, and storms catalogued and explained. But what happens when that certainty begins to break? When researchers uncover massive geoglyphs and earthworks, evidence that indigenous societies in parts of Amazonia organized large communal projects and practiced extensive landscape modification. Our view of pre-Columbian social complexity changes. When a river flows hot enough to cause severe, potentially lethal burns, and animals appear in locations where they are not expected, it challenges typical migration patterns or historical records. When satellite scans reveal shapes too precise to be natural, buried under centuries of silence. These aren't legends whispered by explorers. They're documented findings that defy everything we thought we knew about Earth's last great wilderness. Could the Amazon be not only a rainforest, but also a long-standing human-shaped cultural landscape, evidence that the human story in the Americas is more complex and ancient than previously assumed? If you believe history is settled, you'll miss the 6 Amazon mysteries that could rewrite it. The final one could erase centuries of what we think we know. Today, we're journeying into the heart of the Amazon to uncover 6 discoveries that continue to baffle researchers and raise questions about what else might be waiting beneath the trees and what these findings reveal about our past. If you're already hooked in for today's mysteries and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's incredible how mysteries like these connect people across continents and cultures. It's almost as if the past itself is calling us together. In the Colombian Amazon, along the Serranía de la Lindosa, 13 kilometers of towering cliffs rise from the forest floor. These ancient rock faces hold something extraordinary: tens of thousands of paintings created with ochre pigments, stretching across sites known as Cerro Azul and Nuevo Tolima. The sheer scale is breathtaking. Imagine walking along these cliff walls, your eyes tracing image after image, human figures climbing ladders, geometric patterns repeating in careful sequences, and animals, so many animals, painted in vivid ochre red against the pale stone. But here's where the mystery deepens. Some researchers interpret certain images as resembling Ice Age megafauna like ground sloths and gomphotheres. If those identifications are correct, and if the images are contemporaneous with dated nearby deposits, circa 12,600 years BP, the paintings could record very ancient fauna. But both the iconographic identifications and the direct dating of the pigments remain contested. A world vastly different from our own, a world where massive creatures roamed the forest before they disappeared forever. Yet, not everyone agrees. The debate surrounding these paintings centers on one crucial question: how old are they really? There are no direct dates on the paintings themselves, no carbon samples that can pin down exactly when the ochre was applied to the rock. What researchers do have are sediments found nearby, layers of earth containing ochre flakes that suggest humans were present in this region around 12,500 years ago. That timing would place them at the end of the Ice Age, when megafauna still roamed South America. It would make these paintings witnesses to a lost world. But there's a complication, one that keeps scientists cautious. Because some motifs resemble post-Columbian domestic animals, scholars caution that the art may span multiple periods. Older panels could have been repainted or new images added later, so the assemblage may include both ancient and more recent work. This raises an unsettling possibility. Could some of these paintings be much younger than they appear? Could the same cliff faces have been used by different people across thousands of years, each generation adding their own images to the ancient canvas? The preservation of the paintings makes dating even more difficult. Ochre is remarkably stable, resistant to weathering and fading, which means paintings from vastly different time periods can look equally old. The imagery itself tells stories we're still learning to read. Human figures are shown in dynamic poses, climbing what look like ladders or rope structures. Their bodies stretched upward as if reaching for something beyond the frame. Are these depictions of daily life, showing how people accessed high cliffs or trees? Or do they represent something more symbolic, journeys to other realms, spiritual ascents captured in pigment and stone? The geometric motifs scattered throughout the paintings add another layer of meaning. Circles, lines, and repeating patterns suggest careful planning and shared symbolism, visual languages that meant something specific to the people who created them. Walking among these paintings today, you're struck by their intimacy. These aren't distant artifacts locked behind museum glass. They're exposed to the elements, visible to anyone who makes the journey to this remote part of the Colombian Amazon. The ochre still glows in certain light, and you can almost feel the presence of the artists who stood in these same spots millennia ago, mixing their pigments, choosing their subjects, pressing their hands against the rock. The scientific community remains divided. Some researchers insist that the megafauna depictions are genuine, that the artists captured creatures they actually saw before extinction erased them from the landscape. Others remain skeptical, arguing that without firm dating and clearer iconographic evidence, we cannot definitively say what these animals represent. It's possible that later artists, hearing stories of giant beasts passed down through oral traditions, added their interpretations to existing paintings. It's possible that weathering and erosion have altered the images over time, making us see shapes that weren't originally intended. What remains undisputed is the significance of this site. 13 kilometers of painted cliffs represent one of the largest and most complex collections of rock art in the Amazon basin. The variety of subjects, the technical skill displayed in the execution, and the sheer number of individual paintings all point to a thriving human presence in this region for thousands of years. The scale and repetition of imagery suggest repeated, long-term use of these sites by human groups, implying more than just transient visits in many cases. The mystery of Serranía de la Lindosa reminds us how much we still don't know about early human life in the Amazon. For generations, the dominant view among many scholars was that the rainforest was largely uninhabited before European contact, arguing that its dense vegetation and poor soils couldn't support large settled populations. Discovery after discovery has shattered that assumption. The paintings of Serranía de la Lindosa add to the growing evidence that the Amazon was home to advanced cultures, peoples who understood their environment deeply, who created art, and who observed the animals around them with such precision that their images remain recognizable thousands of years later. Standing before these cliffs, questions multiply faster than answers. Who were these artists? What drove them to create such an extensive gallery in this specific location? If they did witness megafauna, what happened when those creatures disappeared? Did they understand they were watching the end of an era? And if the paintings spanned thousands of years, what stories could we uncover if we could definitively date each image layer by layer, revealing the changing world through the eyes of generations of Amazon peoples? The ochre paintings of Serranía de la Lindosa remain a puzzle waiting to be fully solved, a reminder that even in our age of satellite imagery and advanced dating techniques, the past still guards its secrets jealously. What do these ochre images truly capture? Living memory of megafauna or layered stories across centuries? Share the best evidence that convinces you and pin the comment that changes your mind. If this mystery has hooked your imagination, tap like and subscribe so the next discovery appears in your feed first. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, far from any volcanic activity, flows a river that shouldn't exist. The Shanai Timpishka, a name that some translate to heated with the sun's heat, flows at temperatures high enough to cause severe burns upon contact. For kilometers, this stretch of water maintains near boiling heat, steaming in the humid air, creating an environment so extreme that most life cannot survive its touch. Scientists who first studied this river couldn't explain what they were seeing. Rivers this hot are supposed to exist only near volcanoes, where geothermal activity heats water deep underground before it surfaces. But the Shanai Timpishka flows through lowland rainforest, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest volcanic region. The river's heat varies along its length, creating distinct zones of temperature. Field measurements and reports describe temperatures approaching near boiling in some stretches. Reports vary, with some accounts near 90-100 kilometers, which would be dangerous to touch. Ongoing studies aim to quantify exact thermal profiles and heat sources. In others, it cools slightly, allowing unique communities of heat-loving microbes to colonize the rocks and sediment. Researchers mapping the river documented these microbial mats, colorful films of bacteria that have adapted to conditions that would destroy ordinary life. These microorganisms fascinate scientists, not just for their extreme resilience, but for their potential applications. Some produce compounds that might have medicinal value. Chemical defenses evolved to help them survive in this hostile environment. But the central question remains: where does the heat come from? The leading hypothesis involves deep hydrothermal circulation. Water from the Andes, possibly heated by geothermal processes in the mountains, travels through underground channels and fault systems before emerging in the lowlands as the Shanai Timpishka. This would require a complex network of subsurface pathways, water flowing through rock formations deep enough to be warmed by the Earth's natural heat, then rising to the surface far from its origin. Testing this hypothesis isn't simple. The Amazon's geology is layered and complex, with rock formations dating back millions of years. Tracking water through underground systems requires advanced equipment and extensive drilling, difficult in remote rainforest locations. Researchers continue working to map the hydrology using temperature sensors, chemical analysis of the water, and geological surveys to piece together the river's underground journey. Each measurement adds to the picture, but definitive answers remain elusive. The heat creates an environment unlike anywhere else in the Amazon. Steam rises constantly from the surface, creating a microclimate along the riverbanks. Vegetation near the water shows signs of heat stress, leaves curling and bark darkening from constant exposure to humid warmth. Animals avoid the hottest sections entirely, though some species venture to the cooler margins where temperatures become tolerable. The river exists as an anomaly in the landscape, a ribbon of extreme conditions cutting through an ecosystem built for humidity and warmth, not scalding heat. Local communities have known about the Shanai Timpishka for generations. Indigenous peoples in the region regard it with respect and caution, understanding its power long before scientists arrived with thermometers and theories. Stories passed down through families describe the river's heat as a gift from the earth, a place of power where the natural world reveals its hidden forces. Modern research validates this traditional knowledge, confirming that the river is indeed exceptional, a genuine geological mystery rather than exaggeration or folklore. The microbial life thriving in the Shanai Timpishka offers clues about how life adapts to extreme conditions. These organisms have evolved specialized proteins that remain stable at high temperatures, cellular machinery that functions where ordinary cells would simply cook and disintegrate. Studying these adaptations helps scientists understand the limits of life on Earth and potentially on other planets. If microbes can survive in boiling Amazon waters, what other extreme environments might harbor life we haven't yet discovered? The Shanai Timpishka continues to flow, continues to steam, continues to challenge our understanding of how rivers behave. Its existence proves that the Amazon still holds geological surprises, that beneath the familiar green canopy and winding waterways, processes we don't fully comprehend are shaping the landscape. Researchers return year after year, taking measurements, collecting samples, slowly building a complete picture of what makes this river so impossibly hot. The mystery isn't just scientific curiosity. Understanding the Shanai Timpishka's heat source could reveal broader patterns in Amazonian geology, fault systems, and water circulation that affect the entire region. It could explain other thermal anomalies yet to be discovered, hidden in the vastness of the rainforest. And it reminds us that Earth still surprises us, that even well-studied regions can contain phenomena that defy our expectations and demand new explanations. If a river can boil without a volcano and a whale can strand in mangroves, what other impossible events in the Amazon might simply be underreported? Drop a theory in the comments and reply to someone with a source or counterexample. Save this video to a playlist so returning to the remaining mysteries is one click away. In February 2019, residents of Marajo Island near the mouth of the Amazon River discovered something utterly unexpected. 15 meters inland from the water, deep in mangrove undergrowth, lay the body of a juvenile humpback whale. The creature measured approximately 8 meters long, its massive form wedged among the tangled roots and vegetation, far from where any whale should be. Marine biologists who arrived to examine the carcass couldn't immediately explain how it got there or why a humpback whale would be in this region at all. Humpback whales migrate along the Brazilian coast, moving between feeding grounds in colder waters and breeding areas in warmer seas. But this particular location, this particular time of year made no sense. February falls outside the normal migration window for humpbacks in this region. The whales typically pass through these waters months earlier or later, following predictable seasonal patterns refined over millennia. Yet here was a juvenile, dead and stranded so far inland that moving its body back to the water would require significant effort. The positioning added to the mystery. 15 meters is a considerable distance from the shoreline, especially for a creature that weighs several tons even as a juvenile. How did the whale's body travel that far into the mangroves? The most plausible explanation involved the region's extreme tides. The Amazon's mouth experiences tidal variations that can push water far inland, particularly during spring tides when the sun and moon align to create maximum gravitational pull. Strong tides combined with storm conditions could have lifted the whale's body and carried it into the mangroves before the water receded, leaving the carcass stranded. But why was the whale there in the first place? Marine biologists suggested the animal likely died at sea first, then was carried by currents and tides toward the river mouth. Juvenile whales are more vulnerable than adults, more likely to succumb to disease, injury, or disorientation. If this whale had died offshore, its body would have floated at the surface or just below, making it subject to whatever forces wind and water exerted upon it. The Amazon discharges such massive volumes of water into the Atlantic that its currents extend far into the ocean, creating a mixing zone where saltwater and freshwater collide. These turbulent conditions could have pushed the whale's body towards shore, where tides completed the journey inland. Researchers collected samples from the carcass, tissue, and bone specimens that could provide insights into the whale's health before death and potentially identify its specific population. Humpback whales in the South Atlantic are monitored by conservation programs, tracking population recovery after decades of whaling. Genetic analysis could determine where this individual came from, which breeding population it belonged to, and whether its death revealed broader patterns affecting other whales in the region. The rarity of such strandings in the Amazon Delta struck everyone involved. While whale strandings occur along coastlines worldwide, finding one so far inland, in mangrove habitat typically associated with river dolphins, manatees, and smaller marine mammals, was exceptional. Marine biologists noted that they had no records of similar incidents in this specific location. The Amazon's mouth is a complex environment where freshwater and saltwater mix, where tidal influence extends far upstream, and where mangroves create dense barriers between aquatic and terrestrial worlds. For a humpback whale to end up in this setting required a specific combination of circumstances: death at sea, favorable currents, strong tides, and the right timing. The discovery sparked discussions about how much we still don't understand about whale behavior and marine mammal distribution in Amazon waters. Most research on humpbacks in the South Atlantic focuses on their migrations along the open coast, their breeding grounds around offshore islands, and their feeding patterns in colder southern waters. The river mouth region receives less attention, assumed to be outside normal humpback habitat. Yet this juvenile's presence, even in death, suggested these waters might play some role in whale movements we haven't fully documented. Local residents who found the whale expressed shock at the discovery. In communities that have lived along these shores for generations, this was unprecedented. They see many marine animals, dolphins, sea turtles, and various fish species moving between the river and the ocean. but a humpback whale in the mangroves defied their accumulated knowledge of what belonged in this environment. The incident became a story shared throughout the region, a reminder that the Amazon's mouth, where the world's largest river meets the Atlantic Ocean, remains a place of surprises. The whale's death also highlighted the challenges marine animals face in regions where human activity increases. Ship traffic through the Amazon's mouth has grown considerably, and collisions between vessels and whales are a known threat. Fishing operations, pollution, and noise from maritime commerce all affect marine mammals. While investigators couldn't determine this whale's cause of death from the advanced state of decomposition, the incident renewed focus on protecting marine life in the Amazon coastal waters. The carcass was eventually documented, measured, and sampled thoroughly before decisions were made about its disposal. Moving such a large animal from mangrove undergrowth presented logistical challenges, and authorities considered whether to attempt removal or allow natural decomposition to proceed. In either case, the juvenile humpback had already made its contribution to science by simply being where it shouldn't be, forcing researchers to reconsider their assumptions about whale distribution and reminding us that nature doesn't always follow the patterns we expect. Across the Amazon's slower rivers and still backwaters grows a plant that seems to defy physics. Victoria, the giant Amazonian water lily, produces floating leaves that can exceed 2 to 3 meters in diameter. Under controlled demonstrations, Victoria leaves have supported the weight of a small child when the load is evenly distributed. In the wild, such loads and conditions vary. These massive circular pads rest on the water's surface, looking delicate and fragile. Yet they possess strength remarkable enough to support substantial weight when properly distributed. The mechanics behind this strength fascinated botanists and engineers alike, leading to detailed studies of how these plants achieve such extraordinary structural performance. The secret lies underneath. Flip a Victoria leaf over, and you'll see an intricate network of ribs radiating from the center like the girders of a suspension bridge. These veins aren't simple tubes for transporting water and nutrients. They're structural elements, evolved to provide stiffness and support across the leaf's enormous span. The ribbing creates a pattern similar to what engineers use in construction, distributing loads and preventing collapse. Experiments measuring the leaf's effective stiffness revealed values far exceeding what simple disk models would predict, proof that the vascular architecture performs an advanced engineering function. Researchers used computer modeling to understand exactly how the rib system works. By creating virtual versions of the leaf and testing how they responded to various forces, scientists verified that the specific arrangement of veins, their thickness, their spacing, and their connections all contribute to the leaf's remarkable strength. The modeling confirmed what close examination suggested. This isn't a random biological structure, it's an optimized design refined over millions of years of evolution to create the largest possible floating leaf using the minimum amount of structural material. The implications extend beyond botany. Architects and engineers studying the Victoria leaf have drawn inspiration for human constructions. The principles governing how these leaves support weight across large spans without collapsing translate directly to challenges in building design. Several modern structures incorporate design elements inspired by the water lily's ribbing pattern, using similar radiating support systems to create lightweight roofs and bridges that maximize strength while minimizing material use. Biomimicry, the practice of learning from nature's solutions to engineering problems, finds few better examples than the Victoria leaf. But why did these water lilies evolve such massive leaves in the first place? The answer relates to competition for light. In Amazonian waters, many plants vie for access to sunlight, and a larger leaf surface means more photosynthesis, more energy captured from the sun. Victoria's size gives it an advantage, allowing it to shade out competitors and dominate the water's surface. The leaves grow rapidly, unfurling from tight buds into full-size platforms within days, a growth rate that requires both the structural strength to support increasing size and the biological machinery to produce so much tissue so quickly. The leaves also need to stay afloat despite their size. Victoria achieves this through trapped air spaces within the leaf tissue. creating buoyancy that counteracts weight. The leaf's underside features a waxy coating that repels water, preventing saturation that would increase weight and reduce buoyancy. Together, these adaptations allow Victoria to create what are essentially floating platforms, stable enough that small animals sometimes venture onto them, using the leaves as temporary islands in the middle of open water. Growing Victoria in botanical gardens presents challenges. The plants require warm water, high humidity, and ample space. Their roots spread extensively, and the leaves need room to expand without overlapping. Yet despite these demands, Victoria specimens thrive in collections worldwide, where visitors marvel at their size and occasionally witness demonstrations of the leaves' strength, carefully placing weights on the surface to show how much these plant platforms can bear. The flowers of Victoria are equally spectacular, though less famous than the leaves. They bloom at night, opening to release powerful fragrances that attract beetles for pollination. The flowers change color from white to pink over their 2-night blooming period, a signal to pollinators about their reproductive status. After pollination, the flower closes and sinks below the surface, where seeds develop in an underwater fruit before eventually being released to float away and establish new plants. Victoria's existence reminds us that plants too must solve engineering problems. They face the same physical laws as human builders, the same challenges of supporting weight, resisting wind and water currents, and maintaining structural integrity over time. The solutions evolution produces aren't always what engineers would design, but they're often remarkably effective. Studying these natural solutions expands our understanding of what's possible, shows us alternative approaches to problems we thought we'd solved, and occasionally revolutionizes how we think about construction and materials. The giant water lily continues to float serenely across Amazonian waters, its leaves spreading wide, catching sunlight, supporting life, and quietly demonstrating that some of nature's most impressive engineering exists in forms we might overlook if we don't take time to look beneath the surface. In 2013, researchers working in Peru's Tambopata Reserve encountered something completely unknown to science. Tiny silk structures, each no larger than a few centimeters across, appeared on leaves and branches throughout the forest. The structures consisted of a central spire surrounded by a circular picket fence of silk posts, creating a formation that looked more like miniature architecture than anything obviously biological. No one had seen anything like them before, and identifying their creator became an immediate scientific priority. The structures were delicate, precisely constructed, with the fence posts evenly spaced around the central tower. The silk itself appeared typical of spider silk, but which spider species created these strange formations? Initial speculation ranged widely. Some researchers suggested parasitic wasps, others proposed tiny moths, a few considered fungi or even bacterial colonies. The structures appeared consistently throughout certain parts of the reserve, indicating they weren't random anomalies but regular products of some creature's behavior. Time-lapse photography eventually provided the answer. Researchers set up cameras aimed at newly discovered Silkhenges and waited. Days passed, then finally movement. Spiderlings emerged from the central spire, confirming that these structures were indeed created by spiders. But that confirmation only deepened the mystery. Which spider species builds Silkhenges and why? The spiderlings dispersed before they could be identified with certainty, vanishing into the forest to begin their adult lives. Similar structures were later found in Ecuador, suggesting whatever spider creates them has a range across the western Amazon. The function of Silkhenges remains debated. Several hypotheses attempt to explain their purpose. The circular fence might serve as a trap, catching tiny arthropods that could provide food for the developing spiderling. Young spiders are vulnerable and have high energy demands, so a structure that passively captures prey would be advantageous. Alternatively, the fence might offer protection from predators, particularly ants, which are major threats to spider eggs and juveniles. A barrier of silk posts could deter foraging ants or at least slow them down, giving the spiderling time to escape. Some observations noted unusually single eggs within the structures, rather than the egg sacs containing dozens or hundreds of eggs, typical of many spider species. This suggests Silkhenge building spiders might invest heavily in individual offspring, creating elaborate protection for a single developing spiderling, rather than producing many eggs with minimal protection. This reproductive strategy is relatively rare among spiders, but known in some species that inhabit particularly challenging environments. The discovery of Silkhenges illustrates how much remains unknown about Amazonian biodiversity. Despite decades of research, new species and new behaviors continue emerging from the rainforest at a steady rate. The Amazon contains more species per hectare than almost anywhere on Earth, with countless insects, spiders, and other invertebrates still undescribed by science. Many of these creatures are tiny, secretive, and easily overlooked, living their entire lives in the canopy or understory without ever attracting human attention. Silkhenges exist at the intersection of biology and architecture. Like birds' nests or beaver dams, they represent animal construction, instinctive behavior that produces consistent, recognizable structures serving specific purposes. The precision of Silkhenge construction suggests the spider possesses either innate instructions or learning ability, allowing it to reproduce the same design repeatedly. Each fence post must be positioned correctly, the central spire built to the proper height, all without the spider having any conscious understanding of engineering principles. Researchers continue searching for Silkhenges in other parts of the Amazon, hoping to map the geographic range of whatever species creates them. Finding more structures increases the chances of capturing and identifying the adult spider, finally putting a species name to this mysterious behavior. DNA analysis of silk or discarded egg cases might provide answers even without capturing adults, allowing genetic matching to determine which known spider lineage produces Silkhenges or whether they represent a species entirely new to science. The structures also raise questions about spider silk evolution. Most spiders use silk primarily for webs and egg sacs, but some species have evolved incredibly diverse applications. Some create diving bells for living underwater, others build trapdoors for burrows, and still others weave decoys or protective barriers. Silkhenges represent yet another innovation in silk use, showing how versatile this material is and how evolution continues finding new ways to exploit its properties. For now, Silkhenges remain one of nature's small mysteries. They exist in the Amazon, built with precision by an unidentified spider for purposes we can only hypothesize. Their discovery reminds us that mystery exists at every scale, that even invertebrates barely visible to the naked eye can produce phenomena that baffle scientists and inspire wonder. Somewhere in the rainforest, a spider species continues building these structures, following instructions coded into its DNA, creating tiny monuments to the complexity and diversity of life. Do the Silkhenges of Peru reveal a purpose-built nursery or just a curious spider artifact we don't yet understand? Vote engineered or untouched in the comments and explain why in one sentence. Turn on notifications so the next chapter reaches the screen the moment it drops. Hidden beneath the Amazon's green canopy for centuries lay evidence of an engineering achievement that challenges everything we thought we knew about pre-Columbian South America. Geoglyphs, massive earthworks, geometric shapes carved into the landscape by digging ditches and piling earth stretch across southwestern Amazonia, particularly in the Brazilian state of Acre. Researchers have mapped hundreds of geoglyphs, several hundred in Acre, and statistical and LiDAR-based models suggest many thousands more may exist across Amazonia. Model estimates vary. Some papers propose ranges from about 10,000 up to 20,000 else, plus potential sites, and remain uncertain until more surveys are completed. These aren't simple lines or drawings. They're monumental enclosures, circles, squares, rectangles, and connected avenues outlined by trenches up to 11 meters wide and several meters deep. The structures range from roughly 100 to 350 meters across, with some linked by broad earthen roads that stretch for kilometers. Many remain completely hidden until modern deforestation and LiDAR surveys revealed them, proving that even massive human-made structures can vanish when rainforest reclaims the land. The scale is staggering. The geoglyphs cluster especially densely in Acre, scattered across roughly 13,000 square kilometers of landscape. They show geometric diversity, yet maintain standardized layouts, suggesting shared engineering traditions across multiple regions. The creators possessed an advanced understanding of geometry, surveying, and labor organization, building these structures with only stone tools and human effort, moving thousands of cubic meters of earth to create precise shapes visible from above. Radiocarbon and archaeological evidence from multiple geoglyph sites indicate construction and use beginning roughly a few thousand years. Exact chronologies vary by location, and claims of very late reuse require site-specific proof. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal and ceramic evidence at geoglyph sites provides these timelines, showing that multiple generations invested in building and maintaining these earthworks. The longevity of use suggests the structures held sustained importance, that whatever purposes they served remained relevant across centuries. Paleoecological data add crucial context. Researchers analyzing pollen, charcoal, and plant remains from geoglyph sites discovered something unexpected. These structures weren't built in pristine wilderness. The forests surrounding the geoglyphs were anthropogenic, shaped by human management for millennia before the earthworks were created. These weren't natural bamboo forests, they were palm-rich landscapes where indigenous peoples had been selectively encouraging useful plant species for thousands of years. The geoglyphs emerged from landscapes already transformed by human activity, suggesting advanced, long-term environmental management practices. The function of these structures remains debated. Archaeological excavations at various geoglyph sites found few signs of defensive use or dense residential occupation. There aren't the artifacts you'd expect from fortifications or major settlements, limited weapon remains, sparse domestic refuse, and no evidence of large permanent populations living within the enclosures. Instead, leading interpretations emphasize ceremonial purposes, gathering places for regional populations, territorial markers defining spheres of influence, or processional spaces where groups moved through ritualized paths. The regional variation among geoglyphs suggests that different communities adapted the basic concept to their specific needs. Some sites feature single circles, others have multiple enclosures connected by avenues, and still others combine circular and rectangular shapes in complex arrangements. This variation implies local decision-making within broader shared traditions, communities communicating and copying ideas while retaining independence in execution. Recent LiDAR surveys revolutionized geoglyph research. LiDAR uses laser pulses to map ground surfaces beneath vegetation, revealing features invisible to conventional aerial photography. Basin-wide sampling detected 24 previously unknown earthworks in areas still covered by forest, proving that many more remain hidden. Combined with statistical models analyzing tree domestication signals and landscape patterns, researchers now predict that between 10,000 and 23,000 additional geoglyph sites exist throughout Amazonia, the vast majority still concealed under the canopy. This discovery fundamentally reshapes our understanding of Amazon history. For generations, scholars assumed the Amazon couldn't support large pre-Columbian populations, that the rainforest was essentially virgin wilderness before European contact. The geoglyphs prove otherwise. They demonstrate widespread advanced landscape engineering by indigenous societies that thrived in the Amazon for millennia, managing forests, building monumental earthworks, and maintaining complex social organizations capable of coordinating large-scale construction projects. The earthworks also reveal that Amazonian societies possessed knowledge transmission systems capable of maintaining engineering standards across generations and geographic distances. Building geoglyphs required planning, surveying skills to lay out geometric shapes accurately, labor organization to excavate ditches and move earth, and sustained effort to complete and maintain structures over decades or centuries. This knowledge had to be taught, preserved, and refined across time, implying educational traditions and specialized expertise. Modern descendants of these geoglyph building cultures still live throughout the Amazon, carrying forward traditions and knowledge connecting them to this ancient past. Indigenous communities today maintain oral histories, land management practices, and spiritual connections to places that may relate directly to geoglyph sites. Incorporating indigenous knowledge into archaeological research provides insights that physical evidence alone cannot offer, helping researchers understand not just what the geoglyphs are, but what they meant to the people who created them. The environmental implications are equally significant. The geoglyphs demonstrate that large-scale human presence doesn't necessarily mean environmental destruction. The forests surrounding these sites were anthropogenic, but still forested, still biodiverse, still functioning as rainforest ecosystems. This challenges simplistic narratives separating human activity from wilderness, suggesting instead that sustainable human land use and thriving forest ecosystems can coexist when societies develop appropriate management practices. As research continues, more geoglyphs will emerge from beneath the canopy. Each discovery adds detail to our understanding of pre-Columbian Amazon societies, their distribution, their engineering capabilities, and their social organizations. The earthworks stand as monuments not carved in stone, but shaped from the land itself, enduring testaments to cultures whose achievements we're only beginning to fully appreciate. Thousands more wait beneath the trees, silent and hidden, ready to reveal their secrets when LiDAR beams pierce the canopy and expose the ancient geometry beneath. The Amazon's geoglyphs prove that this rainforest holds mysteries still, that history written in earth can survive for millennia, and that the indigenous peoples of South America built civilizations far more advanced than history books long claimed. What knowledge did we lose? What did ancient people understand that we're only now rediscovering? Were they more advanced than we believe, or were they guided by something we can't yet comprehend? Beneath the Amazon's endless green lies a hidden record of science, spirit, and survival, reminding us that the greatest mysteries on Earth may still be the ones we've lived among all along. Thank you for watching this mystery to the end. If you enjoyed these Amazon rainforest mysterious discoveries, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazy and more intriguing as one can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.